Hello, everybody, and indeed, welcome to another edition of Who's Your Hometown Heroes. I'm Tony Val, and today my guest is Jim Selvio. Jim is the chapter president of Wrestlers in Business Network, the Indiana chapter. Please enjoy my conversation with Jim Selvio. Who's Your Hometown Heroes is sponsored by Prometheus Consulting. Prometheus is Indy's most trusted name in outsourced IT support. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
It's my pleasure. Now, Jim, you and I have known each other for a long time.
Indeed.
And I was kicking around on social media the other day, and I noticed something that I was unaware that you were involved in. I was unaware that it even existed, and I thought, my gosh, I want to have Jim on the show and learn about this. I saw that it looks like you're the Indiana chapter president of Wrestlers in Business Network. Am I saying that all correctly?
Absolutely. We use the acronym more than the title, but WIBN, or Wrestlers in Business Network, is correct.
WIBN. Okay, that's going to save me from fumbling it throughout the interview. But I knew you had this wrestling background, very deep wrestling background, but I knew nothing about this organization. So I guess where I wanted to start, Jim, is just tell me about WIBN.
Well, the truth is, Tony, 2 years ago, I didn't know anything about WIBN either. So WIBN was, it's really an effort, if you will, and a subdivision or a sub business of the National Wrestling Coaches Association, a non-for-profit that kind of governs a lot of what happens in our sport of wrestling. And the leader out there is a fellow named Mike Moyer. He's been a leader for a long time. He's an awesome leader, passionate wrestling person, and has done an excellent job of keeping the National Wrestling Coaches Association relevant, providing information, training, education, growing our sport in many ways. Well, one of Mike's passions was we needed some sort of a network to help business folks, and especially help folks emerging out of school, whether it be high school and going into the workforce, or out of college and into the workforce. We need a network of wrestlers out there helping these wrestlers find careers and opportunities. So Mike had a vision, and he's executed that vision by working around the country with some of the folks like me to establish chapters of WIBN in a local community. And then we bring we work as a chapter to grow our own chapter, and that's where we're at. We're still pretty infant in our start, but we're getting there.
Yes. So when was the chapter founded, Jim?
So our chapter was actually founded a little over a year ago. So just about this time last year.
Got it. Well, I love the idea. I feel that somehow, first of all, maybe this is kind of a post-COVID thing, but I feel like in general, the opportunities to network with other professionals have really diminished. And furthermore, I've just never heard anything like this. It's extremely unique. And I was thinking about before you and I got on the call just now, I was thinking about this. I'll bet that you could interact with 100 business people, let's say 20 of which had a wrestling background, and you might not uncover that for 15 out of those 20 people.
No doubt about it. And also kind of a part of your point there was you don't know anything if you have anything else like it, right? And as far as we know, we don't know of any of the other major associations that govern the sports or promote their sports that have anything quite as established as we do. Mike's put a lot of technology in the background. He's really built a separate business out of it. And we are a sub-entity of the National Wrestling Coaches Association. So we're a legalized entity, 501c3, up into the National Wrestling Coaches Association. And I know what Mike was thinking because I've talked to him a lot about this. And people with wrestling backgrounds understand that. Most of your audience that sees this may not have a wrestling background, but wrestlers, and it's not that different from one sport to another, whether it's volleyball or swimming or something else. But wrestlers tend to be pretty passionate group of folks, and they also feel like they've been in the trenches together. And so when you meet another wrestling person, there's a special bond. And again, not necessarily that different from sport to sport, but the adhesion that you get from that bond and the just knowing what somebody went through. If they endured multiple years of scholastic wrestling through middle school and high school, and then they went on into college, and it doesn't matter if it was Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, junior college, and they persevered. They maybe they weren't the starter on the team for 4 years at Purdue or IU or Wabash College for that matter, right? But they endured and they stayed on the team. Well, these people have special bonds, and sometimes those bonds transcend the wrestlers themselves into the families, into the spouses, into the children. And so anybody that has a passion for wrestling is encouraged to look at the WIBN and become a member first, and then to interact within the WIBN. And that technology that Mike took the time to build and spend the money to build allows there to be a database behind the scenes and a CRM behind the scenes, and ways for us to look at events that others have done and kind of duplicate what's been successful, whether it be in Pennsylvania or Ohio or in Kansas or Missouri for that matter, right? So Texas has a great chapter. So we're really, I think as young as we are, the foundation's in place to become as strong and as good and big a network as you can possibly imagine.
The future sounds very, very bright. And I think I'm sitting here remembering interviewing a candidate for a job at Prometheus. This happened, Jim, I'll bet 20 years ago. It's amazing. It's amazing to think we've been around that long. But I can remember sitting with this nice young man. He was a recent college graduate and didn't have, of course, work experience to talk about because he had just graduated. So we really talked about his college experience. He had been a college wrestler. And I remember saying, well, tell me what was that like? What did you go through? How did you get ready for wrestling, et cetera, et cetera? Well, I was really honestly not prepared. He just walked me through the process. And I thought to myself, how can anyone survive that? And I was just very, very impressed. And I remember saying to Denver, the other partner at Prometheus, he and I both kind of realized, okay, if we come across someone with wrestling in their background, that's a little bit of extra credit. That's a special star, because I think there's a shorthand there that says I can endure suffering. I can, if something's difficult, that's not going to stop me. Am I correct in thinking that way about wrestlers?
I think you're 100% correct. And I think that's what kind of differentiates the breed of us, right? And it's what Mike, I think, again, back to Mike Moyer and the NWCA, I think it's what he saw as a realistic opportunity to build such a strong and great network. And he kind of had three pillars that he wanted to fulfill with this. And it leads right into what you're talking about. One of those pillars does anyways. And that is, if an individual was willing to endure all those years of wrestling and not quit, there's a pretty good chance that an employer looking for an employee can reach out to one of these feet folks and say, come to work for me. It's not going to be easy all the time. But what I know about you is you're not going to quit. When it gets hard, you're going to put your nose down and you're going to keep going. You're going to choose hard and you're going to succeed, because you're not going to be, stopped by the things that are hard, and you won't be stopped in your tracks. You might be slowed, but you won't necessarily be stopped. And you'll keep working. And sometimes to a fault, people will continue to try to be successful when the success isn't obvious, right? But the bottom line is employers can really count on wrestlers or folks with wrestling background being great employees. So that's one of those pillars. And just so I don't leave the other two pillars out, The other one of the pillars is, folks that are in business development roles, people like me, really people like you, anybody that owns a business is in a business development role. So if you're in sales or business development, we want to give people in sales and business development the access to this network of other wrestlers to be faithful to. If I have somebody, if I'm out of college and I'm looking for a new, personal lines insurance agent, well, I can go to the network and find a wrestler that sells personal line insurance and maybe make that person, one, a new friend, and two, somebody I do business with. And because that person was a wrestler and I'm a wrestler, we've got two wrestlers, doing commerce together. And I think that was the second pillar that Mike had in mind. And the other pillar is really, I think I said earlier, which is allow emerging students to get connected to folks that have jobs available that can start careers for them. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, very good. Now, this tenacity, Jim, that wrestlers have, I'm curious to hear your opinion. Does wrestling create that tenacity in a person, or is that one of the reasons they chose wrestling over whatever, ping pong or golf or something?
Well, I think you just asked the $1,000,000 question that if I had the answer to, I'd probably be a rich man. I don't know. 20 some years of coaching, and then, gosh, how many years of competing from whatever, 10 years old until I was 22, 23 years old. So a lot of years being involved in the sport. I always ask myself that question: can you take somebody that doesn't have the tenacity and teach them the tenacity? You can teach them skills, right? You can teach them a move, and you can teach them positions and fundamentals and things of that nature. But can you give them that mindset? I kind of concluded that you could. They had to have at least a foundation of it in their brain somewhere that they're competitive. There are certain people I've known in life that just they don't care to be competitive, and that's okay. They're still tremendously successful. There's multiple ways of being successful, but I've also seen where that there was a trigger or a switch in their brain that it just hasn't been turned on yet. And if you find that and you can turn it on, then sure, that's gonna at least be one of those factors that contribute to their success in the sport of wrestling. Because anybody that's been through it, ask people that went through it, that went on to professional sports like football or even basketball or other sports. Well, those folks will say wrestling was the hardest thing I'd ever did, and it's they're not ashamed of it. They're proud of it, and we're not ashamed of it in our sport. It is hard. You got to do
Yes.
it 365 days a year if you're going to be good at it, especially at the high levels in high school and college and beyond. You've got to be able to suffer. You've got to embrace the suffer. You've got to be able to. I mean, part of our sport's making weight. Now it's a lot more managed and monitored today than it was back in the 80s when I was doing it. But which is good, and it's been healthy for the sport. It's been healthy for individuals. But having that tenacity and having that switch, is it there natively? I don't know for sure, Tony, but I think if it's not, I think it can be developed a little bit. But again, I think it's mostly a personal thing. Does that somebody have it in them to? It's hard to wrestle when you're young. It's a sport that's not easy. You have to embrace. You really have to embrace being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And one of the first things kids have to embrace is, and everybody always, laughs and makes fun of this, but the uniform we wear, the singlet. And, a kid in sixth grade going out in a singlet's not comfortable. Well,
I can imagine. Yeah.
Can you get past that? And
Yeah.
so if they get past that, they have a pretty good chance of just not worrying about what people think and going out and doing and perfecting something and developing a skill set that honestly can be very helpful in life. Not just not the physical part necessarily. Certainly could be, hopefully not, but certainly the mindset of what it takes to get through that and not worry about what others think and focus on what's important and get your job done and just keep going to work and getting better every day.
Growing up, I grew up next to a kid. He was a year older than me. He had some sort of issue with his legs, and at some point when he was very, very young, doctors apparently said, he might not ever walk. He surely will never run. Might not ever walk. Well, he became a much decorated wrestler, at least in my town. I don't know
Mhm.
in the state of Illinois. I grew up in the Chicago area. I
Right.
don't exactly know how far he went, but I can tell you this: that guy could pin me on the ground in the neighborhood and hold me there for days on end. There's nothing I could do about it. I mean, just wow. He became really, really skilled. And by the way, very, very nice guy. He was a great friend.
Sure.
But I'm sure that with his condition, he probably experienced a lot of time saying, well, that can't be done. But I'll bet almost every wrestler faces moments where you must say to yourself, I've hit the wall. I've given everything I can. Yet you face it and you give more, and then you have that to draw upon later in life.
Right. You're back to the purpose of WIBN, right? I mean, those folks that can get through that, those folks that can overcome the physical limitations they may have been born with or acquired through life and become skilled at their sport in a way that others haven't had to be challenged by. Um, Again, it speaks a lot about individuals. I think it speaks a lot about the human race. I think we all have a lot more in us than we know. And as a coach, I think that was something that we often focused on was, um, it's easy as a high schooler to really look inward and not think about externally. But when you do and you start realizing what others are accomplishing given their limitations and what you're not accomplishing given everything and advantage that you have, if you can start recognizing that at an early age, you can really start putting yourself on a path to success. Again, regardless of whether it's wrestling, whether it's IT or whatever it is you choose to do in life. And really, honestly, I think as much as I can say it's helped me in life, I think it's helped me as a parent, as a husband, as a friend, as a son, as a brother. So um, those are things where I think wrestling just has permeated a lot of folks' lives that I'm close to, and my high school and college teammates and things of that nature. That I just see it in them all the time. And now that I'm in this WIBN thing, I'm starting to see it in folks that, gosh, I had lunch today with a fella that I coached when I was coaching at North Central High School here in Indianapolis. He was wrestling for Chittard, Bishop Chittard, and Bishop Chittard didn't have much of a program, but they had this fellow. His name's Anthony Bill, and Anthony was a pretty special wrestler in the state, and he did very, very well. Went on to Central Michigan and was on the team there. And here I am, in my later 50s, and I'm sitting down with a fellow that's basically 30, and remembering back in his competitive days, and he had some issues and things he had to work through physically and otherwise to get through life. And um, he's a successful banker now, right? A corporate banker. And it's just really neat to see. And he's like, tell me more about this WIBN. I need to be involved. I need to give back. I need to meet some people. So it's just been
Yeah, I can really imagine that a wrestler who hears about this would say, yes, I want to be involved. What a great idea. Why didn't I think of that?
I haven't found one that said no
Hey,
yet.
there you go. Well,
So
now I see that I think you guys have an event coming up, right? The Olympic Trials Watch Party,
we
Saturday,
do.
April 20th.
We do. And this is part of growing the chapter, right? And trying to make it work and trying to bring people together, trying to bring the community together just to get to know each other and build some momentum. And thankfully, we have somebody that stepped up in the community, joined WIBN and said, what can I do to help? And um, Brian Stewart's his name. Mandy Hill is his kind of another one that stepped up. So Brian and Mandy have gotten together here in the chapter, and they are leading our event coordination, communication, planning, so forth. Thankfully, because it's not necessarily a strong suit of mine. And so they're both on the board, and they've really set out a path of events that they want to do. The most important part of our events is the networking part. Coming together, making introductions, knowing what people do, making sure you know what people do, so that when you run across an opportunity that looks like something that would fit what they do, you can make that introduction, right?
Yeah.
And so we've had a couple of those events where they've just been very casual, open events to the membership. Even non-members can come. They just pay a little bit of money to get into the event. And then just network, just like we all do in everyday life. But to make this successful, we have to have successful events. And Brian and Mandy thought, why not do something around wrestling? And the first thought was, let's do it for the NCAA wrestling tournament, which to my liking is the best sporting event on earth. Not, but about 10% of the population or less would agree with me on that. But um, I've actually had some friends of mine go to the tournament that had nothing to do with wrestling, just because they were
No
curious why
kidding.
I want to do this every year. And they went and they're like, okay, I'm sold. This is cool. So nonetheless, they've come together. Mandy and Brian have come together and they've got some events. And this first one that they're kind of leading is the Olympic trials. We're having it at R2X, which is ready to execute. It's a logistics company, downtown Indianapolis. They took over some space, remodeled it, absolutely beautiful. I mean, they've
Wow.
done a killer job with their space. If you want to see it, go to r2x.com. It is the letter R and then the number two and then X. They are it's phenomenal. Or ready to execute is what it stands for.
Mm.
And got connected with those folks through wrestling. So the owner of that was a Center Grove football player, and he ended up at Ohio State. But one of his high school friends was a wrestler. Those two came together when he got done with his Ohio State and professional career to land back in Indianapolis and start a logistics company.
Wow.
Um, a fellow named Spencer Hayes became his right hand man, and Spencer's passionate about wrestling. Found out at WIBN, brought Joel, the owner, and himself along, and they said, this is absolutely great. And R2X has to hire people. What can we do? And so they stepped up, and there's a fee for the chapter to belong and be a member of the National Wrestling Coaches Association.
Hmm.
They stepped up and paid that for the first year for us so that we didn't have to worry about it, and raise money for that. And then they gave us their space and let us use their space. And for events, we had one event there. And now we're going to have this watch party there. Absolutely fabulous. And again, it just speaks to the nature of people with wrestling. And Joel wasn't a wrestler, but
Interesting.
Joel loves wrestling and he loves wrestlers. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's neat. That is super neat. It sounds like a great group, a great idea. Jim, what's the best way for people to reach out if they want to be involved and learn more? How can they get a hold of you?
if you look up wrestlers in business on the internet, you Google it, you'll find the Indiana chapter. It's a long URL, so I'm not going to bother with that. We don't have a way to post it up on here right now. I don't
No
think. Maybe
problem.
you can post it later.
Yeah, I'll
Um,
put it within the video. Yeah.
okay. But if they click on that link, all the information is there that they need. My contact information should be easily available there as well.
Okay.
And they can just reach out and
Great.
they can follow the links and become a member. And as soon as they do, we have a membership director. That person will reach out to them, welcome them, ask how they can help, ask them to help set up their profile. So one of the things when you set up your profile as a new member, it's kind of like I call it a wrestler's LinkedIn. So
Mm.
hope I'm not breaking any trademarks from Microsoft now with LinkedIn, but it's kind of our own mini LinkedIn, right? So
Yeah.
you can look up people. You say you're looking again, maybe you're looking for somebody that does HVAC work. Well, is there an HVAC person in the network? There probably is, and you can call on that person. So that's
Tremendous.
that's really the best thing to do is just look up Wrestlers in Business Network. Wrestlers in Business Network,
Got
WIBN.
it. Great. Well, Jim, best of luck to you, and please come back and we'll have to do a part two just to get an update maybe next year, see hear how things are going.
I'd love to do that. It'd be neat to see how the membership grows over the next 12 months or so, especially now that we have the actual board in place and people are taking individual roles and owning them and doing them and just really creating some momentum here in the community. It is mostly Central Indiana, but right now it's an all Indiana group. The hope is, Tony, to have a Northern group and a Southern group.
Ah,
So right now we're in Central Indiana and calling it WIBN Indiana. Maybe eventually we'll get a WIBN Northern Indiana and a WIBN Southern Indiana, and maybe change ours to Central Indiana. But
yeah,
we've got some great folks involved. The former CFO of Indiana University's on our board, Royce Deckard, just a great wrestling mind and mentor in our sport. One of the best coaches in the Midwest and maybe in the country. Um, just we got some really neat folks involved, and come and join us and learn about us. It'd be you're more than welcome, and bring that wrestling mindset.
There you go. Love it, Jim. Well, thank you for sharing. Great to hear about what you have going on, and I'll be super interested to get an update here down the road.
Happy to do it, Tony. Thank you so much for having me.